Before going deep into the impacts, let us know what is globalization. As we all know, and you might be knowing, what is globalization. Globalization, in a simple terminology, I can say this is an interdependence or integration, or we can say the interconnectedness of the world, or this is the interconnectedness among the people, among the companies, and among governments. Like, this globalization is that process which has wind up the boundaries, which has crossed the boundary limits of the countries, and has made the whole world a global village. Now it is India, China, suppose Pakistan, all these countries. When we look at them in a global scenario, then there is no individual country, because there is now a global trend in globalization in trade, globalization in culture, globalization in various other aspects. Okay, this globalization, what is the impact, what changes have been taken by this globalization on our agriculture? Like, this globalization has changed all set of life. Like, here you can see from this figure, from this diagram, this has changed the suppose growth of the country in different senses. It has changed the brands, it has outsourcing, it has a change on outsourcing. Like, if we do not have any local items, then we are getting it from anywhere. Or we can say, in our home, this internet facilities, we have minimized the distances. When we are at home, we are with the facility of video calling, we can call, or we can see our relatives, our friends, far from different places. Thus, this globalization has minimized the distances as well. It has shrinked the whole world. It has an impact on trade, it has an impact on culture, it has an impact on capitalism, monopoly power. It also has an accountability. It has integration of economics, impacts on different scenarios. Like, we in agriculture, we know 60% of the Indian population depends on agriculture. So, as we discussed it in our earlier classes, that there should be the main focus of government on the agricultural sector for the development and for the progress. Okay, and this concept of globalization here is not very recent, or we can say this has been felt since colonial time. What was happening here in the British period before independence? Suppose our this South India is producing very good spices, or production of spices over there, and there was an export of this raw cotton and spices from India. And in 1917, we know in our history that the Indian farmers were forced to grow indigo, and our Indian farmers, with the help of Gandhi ji, revolted against against British power, with having the slogan, with having the Champaran Satyagraha. Just not We will not grow indigo in places of food grains. Okay, in order to supply dye to the Britain flourishing textile industry, they wanted to grow their own crops, own grains, to serve their bellies. But they forced against this suppression. Okay, thus globalization had its bones and bands for agriculture from since centuries, we can say. And after freedom, after liberalization, the Indian farmers face new challenges now, in the form of competition from highly subsidized agriculture of developed nations. Suppose Indian farmers, they have to they have to sell their items in the global market because of the globalization. But the farmers in developed countries, they were given subsidies on fertilizers, on the seeds, on the irrigation facilities, etc. They were given subsidies, and Indian farmers were not getting those very subsidies. So the cost of the price of Indian items were higher than the international market, international grains. So there was the Indian farmers had to face these crises there, in that their items were not sell in the markets because of the high price. Okay, then this prompts the need for making Indian agriculture successful and profitable for the government by improving the conditions of small and marginal farmers. They have to give subsidies, they have to give them, arrange the fertilizers, they have to arrange this water facilities, etc., etc., for this. And countering the negative impacts of green revolution, developing and promoting organic farming was done there, and diversifying cropping patterns from cereals to high value crops, because the value of crops were now high. And now they were told that instead of growing cereals or the grains, they need to grow high value crops so that they can minimize this crisis. Okay, now there are positive as well as negative impacts of this globalization on Indian agriculture. We will study it one by one. Like with globalization, new farming practices, okay, in improved mechanization in agriculture, like irrigation, etc. Okay, the traditional practices of the farmers were reduced, were minimized, and they were told that, or they were given the facilities to modernize their practices, like this drip irrigation was the concept to just not to waste the water, and just to irrigate the crop, and supplying water to the roots, as this was a micro irrigation system that has a potential, okay, to save water, to conserve water and nutrients by allowing water to drip slowly only to the roots. Okay, again, use of high yielding variety, especially of cash crops, multi nutrient fertilizers were used, broad spectrum herbicides, pesticides, वगैरह वगैरह, they etc. they were used. Okay, again, this subsistence farming, the traditional farming, were changed to capitalist farming or contract farming, or this commercial farming to feed the country. Again, this was a negative impact, that with this globalization there was a lack of biodiversity due to this monocropping or this deforestation. Again, due to this globalization, the Indian farmers might have to force much unstable prices for these products, fluctuating largely on year-to-year basis because of their global market. Again, the impact of trade liberalization, freedom of trade, freedom of the business of agricultural products on the prices of agricultural products at international level and domestic level depends on what policies other countries follow. They have to see what other countries were doing, what the policies of other countries were. This now, then there was export of major agricultural commodities have been liberalized. There was again major transformation took place with the introduction of high yielding variety of crops. This was a transformation. This was that the hybrid crops or the high yielding variety of crops were introduced because of this globalization, because of the this minimizing border areas. Okay, so the seeds, for example, the seeds giving us the improved or giving us the major yield, if used in America, in the other developed countries, they were practiced in India also. And this innovation coupled with investment in the infrastructure were changed, expansion of credit marketing and exposure. This marketing and processing facilities led to the significant increase in the use of modern inputs. Now, there were different several changes from this by this globalization in the in this agrarian sector, like the food basket, the food items that we were cultivating in our India, that were changed. Now other crops were introduced as well. Again, there were changes in agriculture marketing sector. Now the local markets change into the international markets. The items which was sold or buy in the local markets are now sold in the international markets. Again, there was a change in agricultural exports. We were exporting different the surplus grains or surplus agricultural produces. There were again changes in the share of agricultural employment. The employment share was changed also. There were changes in the share of agriculture in GDP, gross domestic product. The share of gross domestic product, it was changed, as you will see from a table that I will display here. There were again changes in area of cultivation. By improving or expanding the population, the area of cultivation was diversified or divided, but because of the greed or having the competition of having higher yields or to produce more and more crops, that this deforestation was done and the area of cultivation changed. Again, there was contract farming and corporate farming was there, changing the subsidizing practices. There was commercial practices. Now this was something regarding the impacts of globalization on Indian agriculture. Now we can suggest here some points here, or there are some suggestions for the farmers or for the government of India, just to progress the field of agriculture, just to flourish the field of agriculture. What they have to do, firstly they have to make growth in basic services. The basic services needed for this agricultural field, like domestic roads should be arranged or should be developed, harbors should be developed, modern means of communication, storage, standard controlling, etc. These facilities would be on inspiration for export. All the necessary or basic amenities or basic necessities should be given to the farmers. Again, there should be the finance and electricity supply. The subsidy should be given to the farmers. There should be electric supply, which is major need for the electric supply for Indian agriculture is that we know it is very irregular and insufficient. There also there is a lack of finance for the agriculture. It affects on the standard of production and the expenditure of production as well. So it is necessary to apply proper policies to avoid these problems. All the problems should be avoided so that the farmers will live freely and without any stress, etc., and they can produce good supply of agriculture. Third, we have increasing production and export. And implement of this import duty is not useful for long time while facing the international competition, because if India increase import duty, other countries increase their grants. So we have to increase our production and export. We should increase our production, we should increase our export, so that we can compete with the international market. Again, there should be the planning of production. We should not plan as we want to do. No, we should plant those crops, we should plant as big as with a proper planning, with a proper guidance. There should be the expert guidance, what to cultivate, where to cultivate, how to cultivate, and what to do with your with the harvested products, etc. Thank you all. This was all regarding the topic. If you have any questions, and sorry, there is a table here. You can see the 5-year plans, overall this GDP growth rate and the growth rate in GDP of agriculture and allied sector, agriculture and other sectors related to the agriculture. Like we have in 7th plan in 1985 and 1990, there was overall GDP growth rate 6.0 and the contribution of agriculture was 3.2. Similarly, from the table you can see, like in 2006 and 7 survey, the overall GDP growth was 9.2, and the growth rate in GDP of agriculture and allied sectors were only 2.7. Here you can see. Now this was all regarding the topic. Thank you very much.